Incoming chat.
Hello, everybody, and welcome one more time to Incoming Chat, the H2H business communication podcast by Live Chat. Season 3 has been quite interesting. We've been doing a lot of very fun and special interviews. And this time I have the pleasure to invite someone that I've been connected for a long time. And before I explain you why is she here, I just want to tell you a little bit of in the beginning of my career, I had experience in this crazy industries like theme parks and the cruise industry. I worked for a bunch of different companies, and something that always caught my attention, it was the diversity, and not only having a diverse workforce, but also the attention that the companies pay to those things. And that wasn't by mistake. There was people in charge of them, and one of those people in charge of how diversity can benefit the workplace is Francisca, which is my guest today. Francisca Phillips, welcome to Incoming Chat.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for the invitation.
It's a pleasure to have you here because this is a subject that we haven't touched enough. And diversity obviously doesn't just touch races, it touches a whole different world of different opportunities for companies. And proof is the fact that in Incoming Chat, we only had, we were just talking about that, 4 women and as guests. And it's not something that we ever did consciously, it's something that just happened. But there are ways to take care of that. And that's why I want to ask you here. Francisca, you had tons of experience in this area. First of all, why is it important? Why companies hire someone to take care of the diversity in the workplace?
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely it has to be because the company truly believes in diversity being an important aspect of the company to bring in the best talent, to be able to keep the best talent. The diversity of thought always inspires innovation, which that is great and important. But besides all those, business reasons that I think that mostly everybody understands, it's the right thing to do because our world is diverse. A lot of times we just focus on race and ethnicity or gender, which is important. And then we also forget sometimes the diversity of thought, or even in a meeting, if you're with people that are extroverts versus introverts. We don't think about that. And how is it that we can allow maybe an introvert to be able to, pitch their idea in front of everybody, or especially now virtually. The people that are introverted, they don't tend to speak a lot in front of the camera. Maybe they don't want to be in camera. So offering other opportunities for them to be able to express themselves, maybe through the chat or through polling. So diversity is just like such a huge aspect. And I think it's important for companies to understand that if they are employing humans, at the end of the day, we need to really focus on the diverse backgrounds that they bring and the diversity of thought.
And then this is something you've been doing for a while. And do you feel that is something, because again, talking about 10 years ago, the position existed already, right? But do you think it's changing? Is it increasing? Are companies paying more attention to diversity?
Yes, with everything happening around the world, I think that you need those experts in-house to understand in a genuine way what is happening. Not all the companies, of course, are doing it for the right reasons. Unfortunately, there's many companies that there's just like a hot commodity. I mean, especially last year, the diversity and inclusion jobs were everywhere advertised. And that's why, as a professional, it's very important which company you're working for and to understand why they're doing what they're doing. I think that's extremely important. At least for me, it's very important for me to understand the product and know that the company is doing it for the right reasons. And that's where I want to work. So definitely that is a hot topic, a hot commodity right now. Everybody's talking about it, but you need somebody in-house to help you, from communications to understanding to talk to people. Because once again, we can attract a lot of diverse talent. We can hire a lot of diverse talent, but if that talent is not staying with us because there's no inclusion, which a lot of times people forget about that word. And I think that that's like one of the most important ones is to keep those people engaged, making sure that they feel like they belong. They're going to want to go to the competition. And then that's our competitive edge right there.
What are some of the things that companies will do as a starting point, right? I mean, it's not, like you said, it's not just a matter of let's hire a bunch of diverse workforce, but what would be the first steps the companies should start taking into diversity?
I think it's important for the leaders to sit down and say why diversity is important to them specifically. So it could be a business reason, which is totally fine, and understanding, how is it that maybe we need to go into different markets. And that's why we need more diversity within our employees, because they are going to allow us to, create better products or more diverse, markets, give us different ideas. So I think it starts with the leadership sitting down, understanding why this is important to them. And then from there, go and say, okay, do we need this to be an in-house person? Do we maybe have to have a consultant? Because that's okay as well. You could have somebody that is a consultant, or you can sometimes have a hybrid program where you bring in somebody from the outside to do some of the training or some of the talking to, like talking about the different topics, and have somebody in-house that may not necessarily be a diversity and inclusion expert, but they have the passion for it. I think it all starts on what is it that the individual really likes, because again, I go back to it has to be something genuine and intentional, and not just to be able to check a box.
Yeah, no, because
and the other important...
Go ahead, sorry. Go ahead.
No, the other important thing is that a lot of the times companies just get started and they don't really realize what they have in-house. I think it's very important to do an assessment of what they currently have. So let's go ahead and do a self-ID campaign, and let's figure out what is the diversity from our employees. Sometimes you'll be shocked. And a lot of times would be, again, because we're very narrow-minded where we think about diversity in some companies, and they think about just gender, race, ethnicity, and that's it. And there's so many other things that are out there. So if we go with a self-ID campaign, we maybe take a survey of our employees and just think about them and understand what they think about diversity, what they think about inclusion. You suddenly realize that you have a lot of diversity of thought, you have a lot of diverse backgrounds, different nationalities, and you suddenly think, wow, we're like very diverse. Now our next step then is, inclusion.
And do you think that the whole environment has changed now that with a lot of lockdowns around the world? I mean, is it something that companies still can address, or they have to sort of change tactics all over?
No, I think it's never late. Diversity, inclusion, equity, all these and belonging, I think that they're a journey. They're never a destination. So it's not something that you check off the box and you're okay, and then we're good. Because again, we're dealing with human beings, and we're dealing with different societies and different cultures. There's always going to be something out there that we need to address in some way, shape, or form. And what may work this year may not work next year. So, for example, we're seeing how with all the protests and riots and everything that happened last year, and people were suffering. I mean, they were not being treated correctly, and they're still happening this year with a different group of people. And so there's something here that we just did not address. And it's more of, it's not about donating to organizations. I mean, that's really important, right? But companies just writing a check and donating and thinking that they're done and one and done, and that's it. I think that we need to go back to what the root cause of the problem is. And that's why it's important when we work for corporations that when we do these chats, whatever is it that they're learning, let's say about unconscious bias, or they're learning about human differences or blind spots, when you take that and you do it right in the company, then you take that conversation back to your house and you talk to your kids and you talk to your family and you talk to your friends. Hey, this is what I learned. I had no clue. We all have biases, and we need to understand that we need to constantly be checking them, constantly be learning and be more aware of everything. But I think that is the thing that we need to address, that because then those people are also we are all going to take it back to our houses, and then our children are going to learn from what we are learning now, and then we're going to make a difference that way.
No, definitely. But the basic of all, having a proper education from when you're a kid to understand that you don't live in a world that is just your family is a lot more than that, for sure. Now, on positions like yours, do you touch, because something that you mentioned about being authentic with your approach, right? Do you touch certain aspects of marketing, for example? If like they want to go through a campaign, and shall we check with the diversity lady, basically? Or what's the approach of your touch and the communications in general?
So I think that, and it depends on the company. I mean, sometimes some companies use the employee resource groups for that, which I think it's very important, because if you have groups that are representing different ethnicities or different backgrounds or different genders, then you go back to that. And if you're going to a market, let's say the travel industry, it's 80-something% of the decisions of where the family is going to travel is made by women. And so why not go to the women's employee resource group and ask them, hey, what do y'all think of our new itineraries? Or how is it that, our new, page wherever you can go in and book your vacation. Is that friendly? Would you change something? I think that that's very important, that we go back to our employees and ask them for their opinion, and ask the specific groups. And that way we're going to get that genuinity of, is that a word? Genuinity.
I will say yes.
I think so. You're going to get that, that information directly from the person and for the market that you want to potentially go towards.
And do you really need to strategize this sort of approaches, like having a certain way, or it's just like, let's ask the women? You know what I mean? Because that happens too. That companies, without having a proper leadership and diversity, they just have to. They think that having a yoga Friday or a pizza Friday for the dudes, they're addressing all their needs. Like, how is the strategy coming behind this?
So part of the strategy, I think it's important that we think whenever we're making a decision, are all the voices that I need represented at the table? I think that that's the first thing that you can ask. And you don't need a person in charge of DI to tell you that. So I think that that's one thing, that one key takeaway maybe from this conversation today, is that if you're listening and if you're in a group or in a team that y'all are making a decision for whatever it is, it could be for marketing, it could be for the pizza, or it could be for a gathering, whatever the case may be, to say, okay, when we make the decision, look around the table and say, are all the voices represented or not, and who's missing? And then that's how we are going to be able to come up with a solution that's going to be able to be good for mostly everybody.
And like you said about, it's not only about race, genders. I mean, this especially caught my attention when you mentioned introverts and extroverts. Like how, what are some of the things that companies can do to try to get these two people to talk to each other, right? Because it's not just a matter of giving the introverts the podium, is giving them the tools to actually communicate better in their own way, right? So what could be things that the companies can do in that specific area?
So I think that one topic that it's not new, but just more people are talking about it, is psychological safety. I think that that's really key for leaders to understand how they're engaging the extroverts and the introverts, especially with the virtual, environment that we currently have, since last year. I think it's very important to offer different channels to be able to figure out how is it that those people want to communicate to you. I think that is key. Offering different channels, different views, again, looking and ensuring that all voices are heard. So if you are in a virtual meeting, and the same people are always, talking to you or responding to the questions, then start thinking about it. Why is it that so-and-so is not responding? Maybe take it off like after the meeting and go to them and say, hey, I want to make sure that you're participating. I know that you normally have like really great ideas. Is there any way that maybe I can facilitate that you ask questions before or after? But just those, again, go back to the basics, which is like have communication and conversations with your team members, because that's how you're really going to get to know their background. How are they feeling? That is just very important. Again, going back to basics, how are you doing as a human being right now with everything that is happening?
Especially now. When you get to sit on, like, I mean, we invite Francisca, welcome to our company. You're going to be the new diversity officer, or whatever the position is called right now. And what is your first plan of attack? Or where do you see the biggest issues? Is it usually from the top or from the actual workforce? Is it the C-levels, the mid-management, or from the beginning, from the bottom?
I think that, I don't want to call it issues, but yeah, I think that the mid-level management needs a lot of support, because they're the ones that receive the instructions from the C-level, right, on how is it that they need to proceed. And they're also the point of contact from their individual contributors that are reporting to them. Their direct reports coming to them for different things that may not be working. So they're kind of like the middle point. That's a very important one, because they're communicating with two different groups, and they need to make sure that they pass along the message from the top down or from the bottom up. So I think providing them with the tools to have conversations that are harsh or candid conversations that are difficult, but we have to have them as leaders, ensuring that they have the tools and resources to be able to talk about these topics, to feel comfortable, or to bring in somebody from the outside that it's able to facilitate some of these conversations. But at the end of the day, if you're a leader, you will be bound to have a conversation that may not feel very comfortable. But when we think about diversity, some of these groups have had uncomfortable moments their whole lives. So it's not too much to ask from a leader to be able to, be uncomfortable for a couple of minutes when somebody's telling them their story. And that's the way I normally approach it. Okay, this group of people have had a hard time their whole lives. There's always been, oppression, or they've not been able to have their voices be heard. So all we're asking from you is, 20 minutes to be able to have, let's say, a listening conversation, and where you may be uncomfortable because you don't know what to say, but you're listening. And that's the important thing.
Yeah, sometimes that's enough.
Start with listening.
And so, every time companies invest in some initiatives, right, they always want to see a return, either in environment or money, usually. But how do you highlight what are the returns from having initiatives like this? How you tell companies like, look, we're going to benefit this way?
So we start with, let's say, I'm one of the first people to tell you that I do not like to put like quotas or things like that. We definitely need to look constantly to make sure that we're improving, right? But I am not the kind of person who's going to say we need 5 more people of this group and 3 more people of that, because at the end of the day, you need to hire the best talent that is out there. And if we do it right, we will bring a lot of diversity of talent. So we need to make sure that we are, always hiring for the best person. Diversifying the sources from where we're, hiring from. But at the end of the day, where depending on the I guess the industry that you work in, of course, diversity of thought will bring you a lot of innovation. So that's one thing that you can measure the products that you are, trying to expand on or create. The second one is measuring how many ideas you're getting from, like, let's say, the employee resource groups. So if you have these, hackathons, or if you have a problem, or I'm thinking about the previous industry where it's like hospitality industry, how is it that we can go again and create a gadget that is going to make sure that, we're tracking the kids around the place. And then you ask, parents, or you ask the different ERGs for feedback on how to make sure that you get this. So you're able to track pre-asking the group and post-asking the group and how many ideas, if there's something that was able to be developed. The other one is also, I think it's very tied to employee engagement. That's a very easy one to be able to manage and handle. Most companies have either annually or quarterly pulses for employee engagement, because it's important to measure that. And if the employee feels that they're valued, if they feel that their voices are heard, if they feel that they're seen, they will be engaged. They're going to want to contribute that extra mile, right? And your employee engagement numbers are going to be quite high.
When especially in the area of sort of rewards to your employees, right? Do you think diversity takes a big role in defining certain benefits for people in your company?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I have a very good example on that one. We were applying in one of my previous companies to the Human Rights Corporate Equality Index, which is to measure how friendly we are to the LGBTI community. And when the first time that we did it, we started looking at the questions, and one of them was that we were not offering transgender benefits. And it's something that we had not thought about really, but the group that brought it up to us was the LGBTI ERG. And they said, hey, FYI, this is something that, it's coming down the line. I think it's really important, and it's important for our community. We went ahead, we talked to the person in charge of benefits, and we were able to work that out. And, in 1 year, we were able to, like, later on for the following year, be able to get up, not because of the score, but I think that it's important to know with all these indices, whenever the company applies, it's not about winning or not winning, but it gives you great ideas on some of the things that we're not considering.
And do you think that people is being more empowered to sort of, maybe demand is not the right word, but to demand more from their employees, from the employer? Like, they know what's happening around the world. Like you said, there's a lot of oppression and protests and LGBT like all over the streets, because people want new things, right? Do you think people are feeling more empowered to demand to their employer to keep an eye on these things?
I think, again, it depends on the employer, but if you have psychological safety, if you make sure that it's a place where you are free to be yourself, if you are free to be authentic, then you're going to bring those things up, and you're not going to feel that, is there going to be retaliation? How are they going to feel? People go ahead and say, look, this was said by the company and I felt offended, or this was shown by the company and I did not like it. And okay, let's have a conversation. We're all human. We make mistakes, right? Because that's one thing that we need to admit right away. We were not going to get it right sometimes the first time, but we learn. And I think that as long as it's an environment where the company makes it an environment where people can speak up and there's no retaliation for whatever they say, people are going to feel a little bit more empowered to be able to bring up their point of view.
Did you ever find any industries that they're hard to break in diversity, like in these industries that they will, for example, just not take women, or they will not take Latinos or any other ethnicities? Just, I mean, and I don't mean it in a mean way. Like you said, it could be something just natural for certain industries, but do you recognize certain areas, certain ones that they're not into it?
I don't think I have seen anything like specifically like on purpose. They're just not doing X, Y, and Z. It could be maybe a type of like maybe for religion purposes, like certain things go to certain genders, and that's just part of like a culture or a religion. But what I have seen is that without intentionality, it's like completely unintentional. Where like I can remember one of the industries for a certain job, you need to carry trays with food. And those trays are very heavy when you're carrying them around a dining room table or dining room area. And you don't even think that you're automatically really not opening up to women to be able to work there, because it's just natural of the, like, it's something that we proved and we figured out, oh, well, maybe instead of doing trays, we can do carts. And then that's how, when you start rethinking how you're doing things, you're going to be able to, again, be more diverse or more attract different talent.
Because you're actually doing it the other way. Instead of trying to fix just to hire and train, you change the problem. You fix the problem, the main problem, in order to.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Well, but you have to think about it too. Like sometimes we say, well, we're not getting the right talent. We're not getting diverse talent. The talent exists out there. Where there's tons of talented people. And when we start looking at diversity, I mean, I don't like it when people say like, well, there's just not enough good talent for X, Y, and Z or whatever, group. That's just not true. It's just that we're not looking in the right places. And that's what we need to go back, and even how we write the job descriptions. For the job descriptions to not have biased language. And we call it like driven person or driven personality. And we don't associate that with, sometimes if a woman reads that, we tend as women, not all of them, but we tend to say, well, that's not for me. That's more for like a guy. So using maybe, bias decoders for the language that we're putting up there on job descriptions, that's something so small, but it's so big because, as women, and this is a generalization, but we always say we have to check every single box before we even apply to a job. And we say, and guys tend to go in and say, I only qualify for like 3 of them, but I'm just going to go. This is, of course, generalization totally. Yeah. But it's something that we need to think about, right? And when we have a job description, that it's very neutral, so that way either men, women, or non-binary individuals are able to say, hey, that's a place for me. Because even if in a job description we put he or she, we don't think about they, that person is not going to feel that job is for them.
Yeah, something as little, but it's so important as language. It makes a huge difference. Mm-hmm. Now, as a marketer, I know that one of the things that we know is that you never make everybody happy. So there's hardly a way to keep everybody on the same level of happiness. And that's probably something you have to deal with too when you try to solve certain groups' main issues. Maybe you're going to cross other groups' boundaries or ideas or whatever. How do you deal with this idea of trying to keep a well balance without crossing other people's or other cultures' boundaries? Is just how do you balance that?
I think if we look at it from another perspective and we think about the intersectionality of employees or people, then you're not going to be thinking about this group or that group or that group. So whenever we make decisions, you have at the table somebody representing different backgrounds or different thoughts. You're going to be able to come up with a solution that, again, to your point, not everybody will be happy with, maybe, but it's something that will have a piece that will be good for that specific, individual. I think over here, it's very important to think about not the golden rule, but the platinum rule, which is we need to go ahead and give people what they want to be giving or treat them how they want to be treated. A lot of times we say, I don't see color, I treat everybody the same. Well, one thing is equality, but the other one, very important one, is equity. And I cannot be here like Oprah and say everybody gets a car and a car and a car. And maybe something what like one person really needs is not a car, but it's just they'll be okay with just a bicycle to be able to go to work and come back, right? Or you give shoes to everybody, but there's somebody that actually needs a coat because it's very cold over there and they have plenty of shoes, but the coat is one that they really need to be able to go to work. So we don't talk to individuals, we don't understand their needs, and that's going to be the problem. Whenever we see that we're offering something that it fits everybody, we assume it fits everybody, but it doesn't.
And I remember when working in the US, it's not uncommon to find diversity positions, right? Positions like yours that oversees certain initiatives. But now in Europe, it's different because the diversity is something that is becoming more normal or is becoming acknowledged, at least. I mean, diversity has been here forever, but companies started looking for maybe we should try to answer to these different groups. Now, from our side, what would you recommend HR people or companies in general, how they should start this approach? What will be the first things for them to do around a subject that they might not even know yet?
Yes, so I think that the diversity specifically of like checking boxes and knowing who you are and your race and your background. I have a story on this one. I'm originally from Chile. And in Chile, really, we did not have a ton of diversity, or we really didn't talk about diversity. Now that there's diversity of thought and here and there, but really we did not see a lot of differences. Maybe socioeconomic, there were plenty. But when I came to the States, I got married to a Texan. I went to get my driver's license, and when I get there, the lady says to me, like, your race is wrong there. It says you're white, and I said, yeah, that's what I checked off on my. That's what I am. That's my race. She's like, you're not white. And I look at myself and I say, well, maybe I can because, it's summer in Chile. It's winter here. And she's like, it can be different seasons. So I'm like, okay, this is my opportunity. So in that moment, you say, I need to assume positive intent. Probably it is that she just doesn't know, which is okay. And it's my opportunity to maybe teach her something. So I told her, yeah, like whenever it's winter here, it's summer there, it's like different seasons. And I actually, for race, yes, I am white. Like, what do you mean? Like, tell me more, like, ask questions. And she said, you're Hispanic. And I said, oh, that's ethnicity. That's not race. And we got into this conversation where, like we here in the States, I think we make a very big difference between what race and ethnicity. And you check this box, or is this one or is that, where I see, like, for example, in Europe, it's just like we are who we are and we love each other for who we are. And it's like it's diversity comes very naturally. And that's why I think inclusion is what is really key for a lot of companies nowadays, is to ensure that whatever diversity they already have, whether it was intentional or not, to make sure that, the people that are working in those companies are feeling that they really belong and they want to stay there.
That's gonna for sure is gonna relate to a few companies around here. Just because like you said, and I really appreciate the way you handle that, because you're assuming that it just they don't know, because you could take a completely different approach and start fighting like, are you being racist towards me or whatever. So in the future of diversity in the workforce, right? Like what's going to be happening, or what are the things you see that they're changing in a positive way?
I think that definitely the employees are going to have more of a voice on where the company's going when it comes to, some of the policies, some of the benefits. A lot of times, and I've been in human resources for over 20 years. It happens in many companies where we make decisions and they're in a vacuum because we believe that in human resources or people team or whatever you want to call it, we just know, right? We know about benefits, we know about comp, we know total rewards.
I remember being my favorite phrase, like, I'm just going to talk to HR. As right. HR is a thing,
But at the end of the day, let's start by saying, if HR, once again, is not representing your population, then again, you only have certain voices making the decisions. So I think that that's the future, is going to be like whenever there's certain things, of course, that you need to follow proper legalities and, For example, now if they're wearing a mask or not wearing a mask whenever company or office is open, that's probably not going to be something that the company can make a choice or can ask if you're comfortable or not. Probably that's going to be a mandate from whatever state or city that the company is in or the office is in. But I think that definitely they're going to be shaping the future of how benefits are, what we consider good or bad for the employee. Again, we're going to tend to go back to the employee to ask them for their opinion, which is what should have happened always. But I think what we were talking about earlier, employees are, and humans in general, I think they're feeling a little bit more empowered that they need to make their voices heard, because at the end of the day, very few people are going to come to you and say, Marcos, what do you really like? Right? I mean, if you don't speak up and you don't say what you want in a respectful way, and as companies, we offer those channels to be able for every voice to be heard, then it's going to make a better company, because at the end of the day, humans are our best asset.
I love that, especially that last bit. If you have to recommend a good knowledge place or a good either books or websites or anything that you feel that is inspiring for people from HR listening to the show, like where they should go and learn a little bit more about how to start an initiative in their company.
So let me see. With diversity, I tend to go like to Diversity Inc. They do have like a membership, and they also have some free resources. There's tons of free resources out there. So whoever is it that they want to start some D&I for their company, number one, if you can hire someone, great, because then that way that's going to be the focus of that person to be able to, direct or guide a lot of these initiatives. But if you're not able to afford to have a person full-time there, maybe get somebody that they truly feel like a passion for it, and this could be a side project or a stretch assignment. Second, you don't need a ton of money to get these things started. There's a lot of free resources. So as I was saying, it's like Diversity Inc., Diversity Best Practices. You just Google, like literally anything is out there. Even LinkedIn has a lot of courses currently that are free for anybody to use, like unconscious bias, being a bystander or upstander, not a bystander, microaggressions. There's tons of like really free resources. And so, yeah, just I think saying Google, like my mom calls it, is my best friend, because you can get a lot of things out there. And I really don't go to like just one place for one thing. It's like different things for different needs. But those are the ones that I just think of, that they have a lot of like blogs and articles and just like diversity in general.
Awesome. And just so to close down our short conversation, if it's one message that you want to drop out there to a company, like a company will say, okay, Francisca, you can give us one advice. What will that be?
Listen. Like literally listen. There's a lot of times, once again, we go ahead and start with things and we react very quickly in creating something that we think is going to be beneficial for someone, or that we're taking care of a problem, or we're responding in XYZ way. And it's like, pause, take a step back, and just listen to what the individuals are saying, or what is happening around the world.
I definitely want to close the show with that specific. So if you're watching this, listen. And not only listen to your employees, listen to our next episode as well, Francisca. So I really appreciate you being here. This is a subject that we wanted to touch for a while. And I really appreciate the way you explain it, because I think it's going to be very beneficial for a lot of companies and a lot of countries that they get to listen to Incoming Chat. So
awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you again. And thank you everybody for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. And we'll see you next time. Francisca, everybody, cheers.
Ciao.
Incoming Chat.